Hello Year 6 and welcome to our reading session for Tuesday. So we're continuing to read Wonder by Palacio and we are looking at the next two chapters, okay? In the first chapter that we're going to read, we're going to answer most of the questions together. There might be one that I want you to do yourself. And then in the second chapter we're going to read, that is where you're doing the work yourself. And we are looking at inferring information today, okay? Let's get into the text, shall we? Okay. So this first chapter we're going to look at is, before that, so we're looking at using clues to infer information. So the answers that we look at today generally aren't going to be just there in the text for us to take. We're going to have to use clues to help us get there. And in this first chapter that we're going to read, which is called Locks, the questions that I'm looking for us to look at are, why doesn't Oggy look up once as he makes his way to room 301? How does the punctuation on page 38 show us that Miss Petosa was taken aback by Oggy's appearance? How do you think that the author wants us to feel about Henry Joplin at the point in the story? That's one that you're going to write. And then finally, what do you think Oggy is feeling as he stands up to collect his folder from Miss Petosa? Okay, so three of those we're going to do ourselves. The one that's in blue, how do you feel about Henry Joplin? That one we're going to do, you're going to do on your own. And then we are going to read another chapter today, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so quick recap at this point in the story. It's Oggy's first day of school. He's just left his mum and dad and Via, and he's walking into school. Locks. I went straight to room 301 on the third floor. Now I was glad I'd gone on that little tour because I knew exactly where to go and didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing of pretending not to notice. So first question. Why doesn't Oggy look up once as he makes his way to room 301? I would write something like, Oggy doesn't look up once because if he keeps his head down, people might not notice him, and he doesn't like it when people see his face. Let's continue. I went inside the classroom, and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while all the kids started sitting at the different desks. The desks were in a half circle facing the chalkboard. So I chose the desk in the middle towards the back, which I thought would make it harder for anyone to stare at me. I still kept my head way down, just looking up enough from under my bangs to see everyone's feet. Remember that bangs is like a fringe. He's got quite a long fringe. As the desk started filling up, I did notice that no one sat next to me. A couple of times someone was about to sit next to me, then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. Hey August, it was Charlotte, giving me a little wave as she sat down at the desk in front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit way up in the front of the class, I don't know. Hey, I said, nodding hello. Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her, talking to some other kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting down next to me. It was Jack Will. Jack. What's up? He said, nodding at me. Hey Jack, I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wish I hadn't done because it felt kind of uncool. Okay kids, okay everybody, settle down, and said the teacher, now facing us. She had written her name, Miss Petosa, on the chalkboard. Everyone find a seat please, come in, she said to a couple of kids who had just walked in the room. There's a seat right there, and right there. She hadn't noticed me yet. Now the first thing I want everyone to do is to stop talking and, she noticed me. Put your backpacks down and quiet down. She had only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me. Like I said, I'm used to it by now. Okay, the question very quickly. How does the punctuation on page 38 show us that Miss Petosa is taken back by Oggy's appearance? I think the answer to that is the ellipsis that is used showed that Miss Petosa had a slight break in her sentence when she saw Oggy. This made her, just for a second, forget that what she was saying, as she kind of was suddenly a little bit shocked. Let's continue. I'm going to take attendance and do the seating chart, she continued, sitting on the edge of her desk. Next to her were 3 neat rows of accordion folders. When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you a folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule and your combination lock, which you should not try to open until I tell you to. Your locker number is written on the class schedule. Be forewarned that some lockers are not right outside the class but down the hall. And before anyone even thinks of asking, no, you cannot switch lockers and you can't switch locks. Then if there's time at the end of this period, We're all going to get to know each other a little bit better. Okay? Okay. She picked up the clipboard on her desk and started reading out the names out loud. Okay, so Julian Albans, she said, looking up. Julian raised his hand and said, here, at the same time. Hi, Julian, she said, making a note on her seating chart. She picked up the very first folder and held it out towards him. Come pick it up, she said, kind of no nonsense. He got up and took it from her. Zemima Chin. She handed a folder to each kid as she read off the names. As she went down the list, I noticed that the seat next to me was the only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting on one desk just a few seats away. When she called the name of one of them, a big kid named Henry Joplin, who already looked like a teenager, she said, Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you take that seat, okay? She handed him his folder and pointed to the desk next to mine. Although I didn't look at him directly, I could tell Henry did not want to move next to me, just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor as he came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped his backpack up really high on the right side of the desk, so it was kind of like a wall between his desk and mine. Right, question. How do you think the author wants us to feel about Henry Joplin at this point in the story, and how does she achieve this? So, can you write that answer in your book? So what do we think about Henry Joplin so far, and how has the author made us think that way? You might want to pause the video to do that. Pause now. Okay, let's continue in with the story. Maya Markovich, Miss Petosa was saying. Here, said a girl about 4 desks down from me. Miles Norrie? Here, said the kid that had been sitting with Henry Joplin. As he walked back to his desk, I saw him shoot Henry a poor you look. August Pullman, said Miss Petosa. Here, I said quietly, raising my hand a bit. Hi, August, she said, smiling at me very nicely when I went up to get my folder. I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning into my back for a few seconds. I stood in the front of the class and everyone looked down when I walked back to my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing it, because she had specifically told us not to. I was already pretty good at opening locks anyway, because I've used them on my bike. Henry kept trying to open his lock but couldn't do it. He was getting frustrated and kind of cursing under his breath. So, quick thing, they all get like a little lock to put on, like the one that's on my desk, to put on their lockers, because in this school everyone has their own locker. Miss Petosa called out the next few names, and the last one was Jack Quill. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, okay, so everybody write your combinations down somewhere safe that you won't forget. Okay? But if you do forget, which happens at least 3.2 times per semester, which is like a term, Mrs. Garcia has a list of all the combination numbers. Now go. Ahead, take your locks out of your folders and spend a couple of minutes practicing how to open them. Though I know some of you went ahead and did that anyway. She was looking at Henry when she said that. And in the meanwhile, I'll tell you guys a little something about myself. And then you guys can tell me a little bit about yourselves. Well, get to know each other. Sound good? Cool. She smiled at everyone, though I felt she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Mrs. Garcia's smile, but a normal smile, like she meant it. She looked very different from what I thought teachers were going to look like. I guess I thought she'd look like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, an old lady with a big bun on the top of her head. But in fact, she looked exactly like Mon Mothma from Star Wars Episode 4. Haircut, kind of like a boy's, and a big white shirt, kind of like a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry still couldn't get his lock to open, and he was getting more and more frustrated every time someone else popped one open. He got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, if he hadn't have put the backpack between us, I most definitely would have offered to help him. Okay, and that last question we missed. What do you think Oggy is feeling as he stands up to collect his folder from Miss Petosa? Well, I think Oggy's feeling that everybody is looking at him and everyone's staring at him, but trying to do it so it's not obvious. Right, we're going to look at this next chapter together, which is a slightly shorter chapter. It's called Around the Room, and what I want you to do is there's 3 questions here that I want you to answer yourself. So you can either wait till the end of the chapter, or you can pause it as you see the answers for it. So the 3 questions. What do we learn about Julian and Charlotte in this chapter? Second one, what does Julian value? So how does he try to impress the rest of the class? So it's kind of like 2 questions in one. And what do you think Oggy will say about himself when it comes to his turn? So far you should have written 1 answer from the previous ones. And then we've got these 3 to do. Let's go into it. Around the room. I'm sorry this video is getting on a bit, but I want to read these 2 chapters. Miss Petosa told us a little bit about who she was. It was boring stuff about where she originally came from and how she always wanted to teach, and she left her job on Wall Street about 6 years ago to pursue her dream and teach kids. She ended by asking if anyone had any questions, and Julian raised his hand. Yes? She had to look at the list to remember his name. Julian? That's cool about how you're pursuing your dream, he said. Thank you. You're welcome, he smiled proudly. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Julian? Actually, here's what I want everyone to do. Think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. Actually, wait a minute. How many of you came from Beecher Lower School? About half the kids raised their hands. Okay, so a few of you already know each other, but the rest of you, I guess, are new to the school, right? Okay, so everyone think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. And if you know some of the other kids, try to think of things they don't already know about you. Okay? Okay. So let's start with Julian and we'll go around the room. Julian scrunched up his face and started tapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. Okay, whenever you're ready, Miss Petosa said. Okay, so number 1 is that... do me a favour and start with your names, okay? Miss Petosa interrupted. It'll help me remember everyone. Oh, okay. So my name is Julian, and the number 1 thing I'd like to tell everyone about myself is that I just got Battleground Mystic for my Wii, and it's totally awesome. And the number 2 thing is that we got a ping pong table this summer. Very nice. I love ping pong, said Miss Petosa. Does anyone have any questions for Julian? Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or 1 player? Said the kid named Miles. Not those kind of questions, guys, said Miss Petosa. Okay, so how about you? She pointed to Charlotte, probably because her desk was closest to the front. Oh, sure. Charlotte didn't hesitate for even a second, like she knew exactly what she wanted to say. My name is Charlotte. I have 2 sisters, and we just got a new puppy named Suki in July. We got her from an animal shelter, and she's so cute. That's great, Charlotte. Thank you, said Miss Petosa. Okay then, who's next? And that is the end of that chapter. Told you it was quick. So 3 questions that I want you to answer, okay? What do we learn about Julian and Charlotte in this chapter? That's a bit of a retrieval question, really. What does Julian value? So this is an inference one. How does he try to impress the rest of his class? And then this one's a bit of a prediction question. What do you think Oggy will say about himself when it comes to his turn? Okay, year 6, work hard. I'm going to stop there, and I look forward to seeing your answers on Dojo in a little bit. Goodbye.